A heavy slap cracked through the foyer before I could even take off my coat. The sharp sound echoed off the high ceiling, cutting through the hum of the dishwashers in the kitchen. My face jerked sideways, my cheek burning under the harsh overhead lights. My mother-in-law, Evelyn Carter, stood before me, her jeweled hand raised, her eyes cold as ice. Next to her, my husband, Ethan, didn't blink. He adjusted his gold watch and walked away without a word. My sister-in-law, Chloe, giggled behind her phone, recording everything. Nobody asked why I was late. Nobody cared that I had just finished a 9-hour shift cleaning dental tools just to keep a roof over our heads. They thought I was going to cry. They thought I was the same weak dental assistant they had spent 7 years crushing into the dirt. But as my cheek throbbed, my hand tightened around the leather folder beneath my coat. The documents inside were about to tear their fake empire apart. To understand how I stood in that hallway with blood in my mouth and a smile in my heart, we have to go back to the cold autumn night when the first crack appeared. It was 7:30 p.m. on a freezing Tuesday in late October. The smell of bleach hung heavy in our suburban home. My feet ached inside my cheap rubber work shoes. My hands were dry and cracked from wearing latex gloves all day at the clinic. I walked into the kitchen carrying 2 heavy grocery bags. Ethan sat at the marble island, staring at his phone. He didn't look up when the oak door clicked shut. "You're 20 minutes late, Hannah," he said, his voice flat. "Mother has been waiting. Dinner was supposed to be on the table at 7. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "Dr. Evans had an emergency root canal. I had to stay and sterilize the tray sets." Ethan looked up, his eyes cold and empty of affection. He looked at my faded scrub top and pulled his chair back with a sharp scrape. "You always have an excuse," he muttered, walking past me toward the living room as if I were a piece of furniture blocking his path. This was cold violence, the heavy, suffocating silence that made me feel like a ghost haunting my own life. Evelyn stepped out of the dining room, smoothing her silk blouse. "Just a reminder, Hannah," she said with fake sweetness. "Tomorrow is the 30th anniversary gala for the Carter Hope Foundation. Over 200 high-profile donors are coming. When you serve appetizers, wear something dark. And wash your hands. That smell of dental disinfectant is overwhelming." Chloe snorted from the sofa. "Yeah, Hannah, don't embarrass us like you did at Thanksgiving." I stood in the bright kitchen, clutching my cold hands. For 7 years, I had cleaned their floors and raised my 7-year-old daughter, Lily, in the shadow of their contempt. To them, I was just a girl from a working-class background who should be grateful for their scraps. After putting Lily to bed, I sat at the small desk in our dark bedroom. Lily's winter coat was getting too short, and her boots had holes. I needed to apply for a small $3,000 loan to buy her new gear and fix my old sedan. I logged onto the credit bureau portal and typed in my Social Security number. The screen flickered, then a massive red banner flashed. "Application denied. Credit score, 412. My breath hitched. 412. That was impossible. I had never missed a bill in my life. I opened the credit report, my heart hammering. 4 high-limit corporate credit cards had been opened in my name over the last 3 years. Maxed out. Overdue. Chase Sapphire Reserve, $45,000 unpaid. American Express Gold, $82,000 unpaid. Bank of America line, $120,000 in default. At the bottom sat a bold line that made my blood run cold. EM Holdings, LLC, primary guarantor, Hannah Miller. Total debt, $850,000. EM Holdings, LLC, Evelyn and Ethan. They had stolen my Social Security number, forged my signature, and turned me into the owner of a fraudulent shell company. They were draining millions from Evelyn's charity foundation and dumping all the illegal debt onto my back. If federal auditors ever looked into the foundation, they would find Hannah Miller, the quiet, uneducated dental assistant. I was their financial lamb brought to the slaughter. I sat in the dark room for a long time. Downstairs was silent except for Ethan's soft snores. A single hot tear rolled down my cheek. But as it dropped onto the keyboard, something inside me broke. The fear vanished. The weak, frightened girl disappeared into the dark. I wiped my face and looked at the framed photograph of Lily. I didn't cry again. I opened a new tab, my hand steady, and typed 5 words: Certified Fraud Examiner Online Certification Program. The game was over. The victim was dead, and the investigation had just begun. At that precise moment, as the clock struck 1:15 a.m., Hannah closed her credit report and opened her first textbook on forensic accounting. Her fear was gone, replaced by a quiet, lethal focus. She knew that from this second forward, every smile she gave the Carters would be a lie, and every piece of paper she touched would become a weapon. The smell of lavender soap filled the small bathroom at 5 a.m. Outside, the sky was pitch black. The house was dead silent, except for the quiet hum of the refrigerator downstairs. I looked at my face in the fogged mirror. My skin was pale, with purple circles under my eyes. But the hollow, terrified look was gone. I splashed cold water over my face. It stung like needles, waking up every cell in my body. For 7 years, I had believed their lies. I had let Ethan's silence make me feel small, and Evelyn's sharp words make me feel worthless. I had acted like a victim while they stole my daughter's future. No more. I wiped my face dry. The answer to why they were cruel didn't matter anymore. The only thing that mattered was taking full responsibility for my own life. If I wanted freedom, I had to build it with my own hands. My days became a military routine. By 7 a.m., I was at the dental clinic. The sharp scent of rubbing alcohol and dental resin filled my nose. My hands, once trembling with fatigue, were steady and precise. I sterilized tray sets and hand-pass mirrors with laser focus. Every dollar mattered now. I opened a secret checking account at a credit union 3 miles away, opted out of paper statements, and cut off unnecessary expenses. I packed simple lunches from home and saved every cent. By 5 p.m., I picked up Lily from her program. I held her small, warm hand as we walked through autumn leaves, shielding her completely from the war I was preparing. By 9 p.m., the house fell asleep. Ethan went to his room, his heavy footsteps fading down the hall. That was when my second shift began. I sat at my desk under the soft glow of a lamp. I put on headphones and opened my online course, Certified Fraud Examiner Program. I studied ledger sheets, tax codes, and shell company structures. I learned how criminals hide money behind fake invoices. The dense financial terms began to make perfect sense. My mind felt sharp, clear, and unstoppable. Every night, I gathered evidence. I logged onto the clinic's high-speed scanner during lunch breaks, digitizing every document I could find. I scanned forged signatures on credit applications and zoomed in on the loops. It was Ethan's habit of curling the tail of the letter H. I pulled public filings for EM Holdings, LLC. The address listed was an abandoned warehouse, yet credit statements showed charges for luxury furniture, wine, and Chloe's private trips to Miami. One evening, Ethan approached my door, holding a glass of scotch. The sharp smell of alcohol filled the doorway. "Still up?" he sneered. "What are you doing, Hannah?" "Looking up cheaper groceries." I looked up with a soft, empty smile. "Just finding a recipe for Sunday dinner." "Ethan." He snorted and walked away. He thought he was looking at a meek wife. He had no idea he was looking at his auditor. By late November, my digital binder was complete. 300 pages of verified bank statements, forged signatures, and tax filings. I didn't call local police, since Evelyn sat on their charity board. Instead, I scheduled an appointment with the federal government. On a rainy Thursday morning, I walked into the federal building downtown. The lobby smelled of wet wool and polished marble. I sat in a conference room across from Special Agent Marcus Vance of the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit. He was a middle-aged man with sharp gray eyes and a dark suit. I laid the black leather binder on the table. I didn't cry or complain. I spoke calmly. "Agent Vance," I said, "my Social Security number has been used without my consent to operate a shell company laundering money out of the Carter Hope Foundation." Agent Vance leaned forward and flipped through the pages. His eyes widened as he read the forensic breakdown. "You put this timeline together yourself?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "Every transaction is cross-referenced with bank, timestamps, and forged signatures." Agent Vance closed the binder with a thud. "Mrs. Miller, this isn't just identity theft. This is federal tax fraud and wire fraud. We have been watching this foundation for 6 months, but we lacked the internal trail. You just gave us the keys to the door." He looked at me with respect. "Are you ready for what comes next?" I looked out the window at the rain. I thought of Lily's bright smile and the cold, silent kitchen. "I have never been more ready in my life," I said. At that precise moment, as Hannah stepped out of the federal building into the cool rain, she buttoned her coat and took a deep breath of fresh air. She knew the trap was set. The federal investigation was officially underway, and all she had to do now was wait for the night of the Carter Gala. The grand ballroom of the Hilton Hotel smelled of expensive perfume, roast beef, and fresh lilies. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceiling, throwing bright light over 200 wealthy guests. Diamond necklaces shimmered under the lights, and glasses of champagne clinked together with soft, sharp rings. At the center of the room stood Evelyn Carter in a floor-length emerald silk gown. Her silver hair was styled to perfection. She held a glass of vintage wine, surrounded by local politicians, wealthy donors, and reporters, laughing softly with artificial warmth. Next to her stood my husband, Ethan, in a tailored black tuxedo. He adjusted his silk bow tie and smiled at a real estate investor while sipping his scotch. Chloe stood beside him in a sparkling red dress, holding her phone high to record a live video for her social media followers. They looked like the perfect American success story, wealthy, generous, and powerful. I stood near the edge of the room in a simple, dark navy dress. My hair was pulled back neatly. I wore no jewelry and held no drink. My eyes were calm and clear as I watched them perform. 20 minutes before the opening speeches, Evelyn caught my eye and signaled me toward the private VIP dressing room behind the main stage. I walked into the room, and the door clicked shut, cutting off the noise of the ballroom. The air smelled of heavy rose perfume and hairspray. Evelyn turned around, her smile disappearing instantly. Her sharp eyes scanned my plain dress with disgust. She pulled a folded document from her leather handbag and slapped it onto the vanity table beside her glass of wine. "Sign this, Hannah," Evelyn commanded, her voice cold as broken glass. I looked at the document. The title read, "Waiver of Financial Claims and Custody Agreement." "What is this?" I asked, keeping my voice quiet and steady. "It is your exit ticket," Evelyn sneered. "Ethan is divorcing you after tonight. This document waives any right you have to the Carter family assets and grants Ethan full legal custody of Lily." My heart pounded against my ribs, but I did not step back. "And if I refuse?" Evelyn raised her chin, her face twisting into a sneer. "If you refuse, Our family attorneys will destroy you. We will file charges claiming you stole money from the foundation and declare you an unfit mother. You work as a dental assistant. Hannah, you clean saliva off mirrors for $20 an hour. You have no money, no power, and no influence. You will lose Lily and spend your life behind bars. I looked at her face, reading every line of hatred and arrogance. For 7 years, this woman had terrified me. But tonight, I felt nothing. No fear, no anger, no pain. Reaching into my handbag, I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen once. "Mother," I said, my voice echoing clearly in the small room. "Are you threatening a federal witness 20 minutes before an IRS audit?" Evelyn froze, her eyes widening slightly. Before she could answer, a knock echoed against the heavy wooden door. I walked past her, opened the door, and stepped back into the hallway. The ballroom was packed. Evelyn followed me out, smoothing her silk dress, her face regaining its royal composure. She walked up the stairs to the main stage and took her place behind the podium. The crowd applauded warmly, and flashbulbs burst in bright pops of white light. Evelyn leaned into the microphone. Her voice boomed through the speakers, filling the vast room. "Welcome, dear friends, honored guests, and generous supporters," Evelyn began, placing her hand over her heart. "For 30 years, the Carter Hope Foundation has been a beacon of light. We have built shelters for homeless mothers, funded scholarships for youth, and brought hope to the darkest corners of our city. Tithing our success back to the community is not just our duty, it is our family's sacred legacy." Ethan stood beside the stage, clapping proudly. Chloe cheered for her mother, recording the speech on her phone. Suddenly, the heavy double doors at the back of the ballroom slammed open with a loud thud that echoed off the marble walls. The applause died instantly. 200 heads turned toward the entrance. A dozen men and women in dark suits walked into the room with military precision. 4 armed federal marshals flanked them, their badges gleaming under the lights. At the head of the group walked Special Agent Marcus Vance, carrying a thick leather folder and a stack of federal warrants. Panic rippled through the crowd like a cold wave. Whispers erupted. Agent Vance walked directly down the center aisle, his heavy dress shoes clicking sharply against the polished marble floor. He stopped right at the foot of the stage. "Evelyn Carter, Ethan Carter." Agent Vance's deep voice cut through the silence. Evelyn's face turned pale beneath her thick makeup, but she forced a tight smile. "Agent, whatever this is, it is extremely unprofessional. This is a private charity event. Please speak to our legal counsel tomorrow." Agent Vance did not smile. He pulled out a document bearing a gold federal seal. "I am Special Agent Marcus Vance with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. I am executing a federal search and seizure warrant issued by the United States District Court. This warrant covers all financial servers, physical ledgers, and bank accounts associated with the Carter Hope Foundation and EM Holdings, LLC. Gasps filled the room. A reporter in the front row raised his camera and began filming. "This is absurd," Ethan shouted, stepping forward, his face red with anger. "Do you know who we are? My family built this city's hospital wing. This is a misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding, Mr. Carter," Agent Vance said calmly. He gestured to a federal technician standing near the audiovisual booth. Under federal court order, the technician inserted an encrypted flash drive into the main system. The massive digital screen behind Evelyn, which had been displaying a slideshow of smiling children, flickered once, went black, and then illuminated with bright white text. It was a digital forensic ledger. The first slide showed a high-resolution scan of a bank application. Across the signature line sat my name, Hannah Miller, signed in dark blue ink. Beside it, the system displayed an enlarged forensic comparison of Ethan's handwriting from his personal checks. The loops on the letters, the tail of the H, and the slant matched perfectly. Text flashed below the image. Forged signature, primary guarantor. Hannah Miller identity theft. The crowd gasped. The screen shifted to the next slide, showing a flow chart of $14 million moving from the Carter Hope Foundation's public donation accounts directly into EM Holdings, LLC. From there, the money split into 3 branches. $420,000 transferred to a luxury marina for Ethan's yacht membership and Atlantic City gambling debts. $310,000 paid for Khloe Carter's luxury fashion, private jets, and hotels in Miami. And photographs of an abandoned, rotting warehouse on the edge of town, side by side with the foundation's brochure claiming it was a fully operational 50-bed shelter for homeless mothers. That project never opened. A woman in the third row cried out, dropping her champagne glass. It shattered against the floor. I donated $50,000 for those beds. Evelyn grabbed the edges of the podium, her knuckles turning white. Flashbulbs exploded like rapid fireworks. "Turn those screens off," Evelyn screamed, her cultured voice breaking into a harsh screech. "Turn them off right now. This is a smear campaign. My daughter-in-law created those fake documents. She is unstable. She works as a dental assistant. She has been stealing from us for years." Agent Vance raised his hand calmly. "Mrs. Carter, the digital evidence displayed on these screens was pulled directly from your foundation's private servers 2 hours ago under a federal warrant. It has been verified by forensic accountants." Evelyn turned her head sharply, her wild, terrified eyes locking onto Ethan. "Ethan, fix this. You told me you handled the records. You told me she would never check her credit report." Ethan's face went from red to ghostly pale. He backed away from his mother, his hands shaking. "Don't look at me," Ethan yelled, his voice cracking with panic. "She directed every transfer. She told me to use Hannah's social security number. She said Hannah was too stupid to ever look at a bank statement. She told me if the IRS ever audited us, we could blame the whole thing on Hannah and let her take the fall." Shockwaves boomed through the room. Khloe gasped, dropping her iPhone onto the marble floor. The screen cracked into a web of lines. "You coward!" Evelyn shrieked, lunging toward her son. "I built this family. You useless, incompetent fool." In front of 200 wealthy donors, city officials, and reporters, the polished Carter family dissolved into an ugly, screaming brawl. They shouted accusations, exposed each other's secrets, and pointed fingers in desperate attempts to save themselves. I stood near the edge of the stage, watching the chaos unfold. The truth, printed in cold black ink on those screens, spoke louder than any words I could ever utter. 2 federal agents stepped onto the stage. They took Evelyn by her arms, clicked silver handcuffs around her wrists, and led her down the stairs. 2 more marshals pulled Ethan's arms behind his back as he wept and pleaded. Evelyn passed right by me as she was escorted out. Her hair was messy, her green silk dress wrinkled. She stopped for a brief second, staring at me with pure venom. "You destroyed us," she whispered, her voice trembling with rage. "You ruined this family." I looked into her eyes with steady, absolute composure. "No, Evelyn," I said softly. "I didn't destroy anything. Your fraud destroyed you. I simply stopped lying for you." Evelyn was pulled away, her sharp heels dragging against the floor. Ethan sobbed as he was led out behind her. The grand illusion of the Carter Empire had collapsed into dust in less than 30 minutes. I turned around, walked down the carpeted hallway, and pushed open the heavy glass exit doors of the hotel. The cool night air hit my face, crisp and clean. It smelled of rain, fallen leaves, and fresh asphalt. The sirens of federal police cruisers flashed red and blue against the wet street. I took a deep, long breath. For the first time in 7 years, my chest didn't feel tight. The heavy weight that had crushed my shoulders was completely gone. I was no longer the silent victim. I was no longer the uneducated girl wiping dental tools in fear. I was free, at that precise moment, as the flashing red lights of the federal cruisers faded down the street. Hannah stood alone under the hotel awning. She did not feel victorious or vengeful. She felt a deep, profound stillness. She pulled her phone from her purse, deleted Ethan's number from her contacts, and stepped out into the crisp night air, ready to claim her life. By Friday morning, the headlines across the city were merciless. Photographs of Evelyn in handcuffs and Ethan ducking his head into a police cruiser dominated the front pages. The Carter Hope Foundation's doors were chained shut, sealed by federal court order. An independent audit was launched, and court-appointed trustees began liquidating the foundation's assets to restore funds to the actual homeless shelters and scholarship programs they had exploited for years. The social empire they had spent decades building collapsed overnight. The board of the local hospital removed Evelyn's name from the pediatric wing. Major sponsors pulled their funding, and Chloe's social media sponsors terminated her contracts within 24 hours. She was forced to sell her designer handbags and list her luxury sports car online to pay for upcoming civil settlement fees. A week after the gala, a thick brown envelope arrived in my mailbox. I sat at the kitchen table, the quiet afternoon light filtering through the window. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air. Inside the envelope was a handwritten letter from Ethan, sent from the federal holding facility downtown. I unfolded the lined notebook paper. His handwriting, usually bold and arrogant, was shaky and erratic. "Hannah, please," he wrote. "You have to talk to Agent Vance. Tell him this was a domestic misunderstanding. Tell him I didn't know about the shell company. If you write a statement supporting my character, the judge will grant me bail. I know I wasn't perfect, but I did everything to provide for our family. Think of Lily. She needs her father. If you help me now, I promise after I get out, we will move away and build a real home together." I read the lines slowly. 3 months ago, a letter like this would have sent me into a spiral of guilt and self-doubt. He was still using the word family as a lever to manipulate me, treating my silence as a betrayal while ignoring the years he spent treating me like a ghost. My phone chimed on the table. It was a text message from Evelyn's defense attorney, asking if I would allow Evelyn a short, supervised visit with Lily before her formal indictment hearing. I didn't answer the attorney. Instead, I poured 2 glasses of apple juice and called Lily into the kitchen. Lily ran in, her cheeks rosy, holding a drawing she had just finished. She hopped onto the chair beside me, her small hands wrapping around her glass. I looked at my 7-year-old daughter, her bright, curious eyes, and her gentle smile. I knew I couldn't shield her from the truth forever, but I could offer her honesty and protection. "Lily," I said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Your father's attorney asked if you want to visit him, or if you want to see your grandmother." Lily stopped sipping her juice. Her small hands tightened around the glass. She looked down at the wooden table, remaining quiet for a long moment. The room was still, except for the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. When she looked up, her eyes were steady. "Meme," she asked quietly, "when Daddy used to yell at you and tell you that you weren't smart enough, did he remember that you were my mom?" The question hit me like a physical touch, gentle yet profound. Children see everything. She had felt the cold violence in that house just as deeply as I had. "I don't think he did, sweetie," I answered truthfully. Lily shook her head, slowly. "I don't want to go to that scary house again. And I don't want to see them when they are mean to you." I pulled Lily into a warm hug, pressing a kiss into her soft hair. The lingering doubt in my mind dissolved completely. My decision was not rooted in vengeance or anger. It was rooted in an unshakable boundary to protect my child's peace. I walked over to my desk, picked up Ethan's letter, and placed it back into the brown envelope. I wrote a single line on a sticky note for his attorney. All future communications regarding divorce proceedings and legal matters must go directly through the court. I sealed the envelope, dropped it into the outgoing mail bin, and closed the front door with a firm, quiet click. At that precise moment, as the deadbolt turned smoothly into place, Hannah felt the last thread of emotional manipulation snap forever. She stood in the quiet hallway, listening to Lily humming a song in the living room, completely certain of the boundary she had drawn. 6 months after the gala, the warm spring sun streamed through the wide windows of a quiet third-floor apartment. The air smelled of fresh white paint, lavender detergent, and brewed chamomile tea. I stood in the center of the bright living room, holding a paintbrush in my hand. My hair was cut short in a chic, modern bob, brushing against my shoulders. I wore a simple cream sweater and jeans. My skin was glowing, and my eyes were clear, calm, and grounded. Beside me, Lily dipped her roller into a tray of sage green paint, carefully applying it to the accent wall. Her laughter echoed off the high ceilings as a tiny speck of paint landed on her nose. There were no tense silences here. No sharp, condescending whispers. No heavy boots walking down the hall to make us hold our breath. This small, sunlit space was entirely ours. My professional life had transformed completely. Shortly after obtaining my certified fraud examiner license, I resigned from the dental clinic. I accepted a position as a forensic financial analyst for a national nonprofit organization dedicated to helping victims of domestic and financial abuse. Every day, I sat at a clean oak desk, using my specialized skills to trace hidden assets, uncover forged credit lines, and restore financial independence to women who had been trapped in the dark. I was no longer wiping dental tools in quiet fear. I was building a career rooted in truth, dignity, and purpose. My personal transformation went far deeper than my job title. I had stopped looking back at the years I wasted trying to earn the approval of people who saw me as disposable. The anger that once burned in my chest had softened into a quiet, unwavering peace. I felt no bitterness toward Ethan, Evelyn, or Chloe. They had become strangers from a previous life. Their power over my emotions entirely dissolved. A soft knock at the open front door broke the quiet afternoon. Agent Marcus Vance stood in the hallway, holding a small wooden box and a sealed legal envelope. He wore a gray suit, his expression warm and respectful. "Mrs. Miller," Agent Vance said, stepping inside. "I stopped by to deliver the final court decree regarding your name restoration and credit clearance." I took the envelope from his hands. Inside was a certified federal court order wiping every fraudulent debt from my Social Security record. The $850,000 liability was officially gone. My credit score was restored. My name was completely clean. "Thank you, Agent Vance," I said, holding the paper in my hands. The paper felt crisp and light, weighing nothing at all. Agent Vance smiled, placing the wooden box on the counter. "The court-appointed trustee also requested I drop this off. It's from the Foundation's liquidated assets." Inside the box were the original financial journals and my forged signatures, returned to me after the criminal trial concluded. Ethan and Evelyn had both accepted federal plea agreements, facing years in federal prison. I looked at the forged signatures on the yellowed paper, the exaggerated loops Ethan had drawn 6 years ago to frame me. I walked over to the small metal trash can beside my desk, dropped the forged papers inside, and struck a single wooden match. The bright orange flame caught the corner of the paper. It curled, blackened, and turned to soft gray ash within seconds. The faint smell of wood smoke drifted up toward the open window, carried away by the gentle spring breeze. Lily walked over, wrapping her arms tightly around my waist. She pressed her face against my hip, watching the faint wisps of smoke vanish into the clear air. "All done, Mom?" she asked softly. I looked down at my daughter, then out at the bright green leaves stretching across the trees outside our balcony. I smiled, a genuine, deep smile that reached all the way to my soul. "Yes, sweetie," I whispered, resting my hand on her head. "All done. We are finally home." At that precise moment, as the last wisp of ash cooled in the pan, Hannah looked around her bright, peaceful apartment. She felt no lingering resentment toward the past, only a profound, unshakable gratitude for the quiet life she had built with her own hands. The late afternoon sun cast a warm, honey-gold glow over the Central Park. Golden hour had arrived, painting the canopy of autumn maple trees in deep shades of crimson, orange, and amber. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves, sending a soft shower of gold fluttering down onto the green grass. The air was cool, crisp, and smelled of dry leaves, pine, and roasted coffee. I sat on a weathered wooden bench near the duck pond, holding a warm paper cup in my hands. I wore a soft cream sweater, a dark wool scarf, and comfortable leather boots. My posture was relaxed, my shoulders loose. There was no tension in my neck, no knot of fear in my stomach. A few yards away on the lawn, Lily ran through the fallen leaves, her bright laughter ringing out like silver bells. She wore a bright red coat and yellow boots, chasing a small brown rescue puppy we had adopted 3 months ago. Her cheeks were flush with health, her eyes sparkling with pure, innocent joy. I watched her, a quiet, contented smile touching my lips. 7 years ago, I thought my life was defined by the walls of a cold kitchen and the harsh words of people who treated me like a ghost. I thought I was weak because I had stayed, suffered, and cried in the dark. I spent years waiting for Ethan to change, waiting for Evelyn to show a crumb of kindness, waiting for someone to step in and save me. Now, sitting under the golden sunlight, I knew the truth. No one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. The greatest shift in my life wasn't the forensic license, the federal investigation, or the collapse of the Carter Empire. It was the moment I stopped playing the victim. It was the moment I stopped asking, "Why are they doing this to me?" and started asking, "What am I going to do about it?" I took full responsibility for my own happiness. I chose to study when I was exhausted. I chose to save every dollar. I chose to walk into that federal building and lay the truth on the table. I reached into my handbag, my fingers brushing against my key ring. I pulled out the shiny metal house key to our new apartment. It glittered under the late afternoon sun. That key was more than a piece of metal. It was a boundary. It was proof that my home, my mind, and my heart were no longer open to anyone who brought cruelty, deceit, or disrespect. I didn't hate Ethan. I didn't hate Evelyn. Anger requires energy, and I no longer had any energy to waste on people who belonged in my past. They were simply gone, swept away like dead leaves in the autumn wind. Lily ran over to the bench, gasping for breath, her puppy tumbling over her boots. She plunked down beside me, resting her warm head against my arm. "Mom," she whispered, looking up at the golden canopy above us. "Is it always going to be this peaceful?" I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. The scent of sweet apple shampoo lingered in her hair. I looked out over the sparkling water of the pond, where the setting sun turned the ripples into molten gold. "Yes, sweetie," I said, my voice steady, warm, and sure, because we locked the door to the storm, and we carry the peace inside us. I took a slow, deep breath of the cool, crisp air, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. I was unburdened. I was whole. I was free. People often ask me if seeing my former in-laws face federal prison made me feel victorious. The truth is, my victory didn't happen in a courtroom or a hotel ballroom. My victory happened in the quiet moments when I realized their opinion of me no longer had any power. Healing is not fast, loud, or easy, but it is always your choice. You cannot control the cruelty of others, but you can always control your response. When toxic people from your past ask for another chance, will you open the door out of weakness, or will you smile, turn the deadbolt, and step into your own golden hour? All shadows must fade before the truth, and every pain is simply the start of a beautiful rebirth. Always remember, the right to write a new chapter of your life is forever in your hands. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below so we know we're walking this journey together. Hope to see you on the next page.